People who have came close to dying, what were your last thoughts? Well. Fuck. Double quote. Car accident. Me too. Yelled fuck right before the accident. Something tells me that's a lot of people's final words. Was in a pretty severe car crash in my mid-teens. We got boned by a big Ford van coming home from school one afternoon. I could have swore our light was green, but witnesses said my friend went they were red. I remember looking over and seeing the van and thinking I pretty much resigned immediately to what was about to happen. I was sitting in the front passenger seat holding onto the little handle above the door. The window blew out and I had hundreds of little cuts on my arm, neck and face. It looked like rats had been chewing at me and I had a couple bits of glass in my hand. The passenger side door crushed in far enough to hit me and left fabric imprint all down my side. Completely knocked the wind out of me. And cracked 2 ribs. After I caught my breath I had to crawl out of the driver's side. My hand bleeding all over the place. But was so amped up on adrenaline I hardly noticed any pain. The next day I could hardly move, I was so sore. Almost my whole right side was bruised. It hurt to breathe too deeply. My friend's mom showed me pictures of the car. It was really surprising I got off as well as I did. Funny, for lack of a better word, story. When I was 10, my family went to Florida on vacation with some other extended family. There was a plan where my parents went back home, MA, a few days before my brother and I so we could stay longer with my aunt and cousins. It was my first time traveling with just my older brother and my second time on a plane. The first being the trip there. Coming into Logan Airport, our airplane started to fall out of the sky. Quite literally. Apparently it only happened for about 3 to 5 seconds. But the pressure made the oxygen masks fall from the ceiling. I'd seen enough movies at that point to know that basically meant we were going to die. I was for sure crying and freaking out like everyone else on the aircraft. For sure the most frightening experience of my life. Bar none. But I distinctly remember thinking, I'm never going to get to finish my Age of Empires 2 campaign. So, a video game was ostensibly my last thought. I thought I was having a drug overdose. I just remember thinking how disappointed my mum was going to be with me. My Bill had a moped incident. He was on a moped. A car T-boned him. And as he was flying off the bike, he thought that his wife, who always was pretty worried about him riding, was going to be quite upset at him. I pictured my husband coming home to an empty house and I desperately hoped people would reach out and make sure he was okay. Couldn't stand the thought of him being alone. Mine was similar. It was thinking that at least my wife doesn't have to worry about cleaning the house as I had cleaned right before. I was in a fight and I didn't know I was stabbed in the liver and the lung. I walked away with my friend and collapsed in an alley. I remember bleeding out with calming waves of euphoria washing over me and I thought, I've lived enough. I'm okay with this. I blacked out and woke up in the back of an ambulance with waves of immense pain assaulting my body. Dying isn't awful. Surviving is awful. Who is holding me underwater? I almost passed out. I didn't even know the kid. My best friend's older brother used to do this thing where he would wait for me to exhale while we were swimming and then hold me underwater. I think back on that all of the time and wonder where the FCK were all of the adults. I'm so tired. I wish these doctors would let me sleep. My father-in-law was having a heart attack that is often referred to as the Widowmaker. After everything went down, he's fully recovered. Thankfully. He said it wasn't painful. He was just really tired. He was planning to go home and lay down for a nap. Thankfully, he was in public. And an off-duty paramedic happened to be where he was. If he made it home to take that nap, he wouldn't be here today. It's pretty crazy. A little over 10 years ago I had the Widowmaker heart attack. I spent the first day in the hospital with a balloon pump assisting my heart to help me stay alive until they could perform the surgery the next day. They told my wife that my chances of surviving were only about 20%. I had the priest in. Family. The whole 9 yards. In the morning, as they wheeled me into the operating room, I was doing the Monty Python bit and get the machine that goes ping. In case the administrator comes by with the surgical nurse who was also a MP fan. The look on the surgeon's face was priceless. And I was chuckling as I went under. My last thoughts were we got this. The surgeon later told me that I was the only patient in his entire career that came into his operating room laughing. But that my attitude may have been a large factor in my survival. Everything is so slow and I can't move. Anaphylactic shock right before losing consciousness. Hey, similar, heat exhaustion on a run. Last memory was my steps super slow motion and felt like I was watching a movie blackout before I lost consciousness and started to do the snake dance on the side of the road. Woke up asking if the doctor knew where I was. Dumbus me said not a restaurant. Right? Double quote. I tried to commit via sleeping pills. My last thoughts were just pure relief. Because either I'd finally get the help I needed or the pain would end forever. People who says why not just let them die don't understand what they really want is help. Reach out more to those who are going through a tough period. Learn to read their signs. A stretched out arm means the world to them. Nearly was run over in a town square when a car decided to go through it. Instead of around it. And went onto the sidewalk. First and only thing to come out of my mouth to my friend next to me before we dove out of the way. Well, that's not good. Was on a road trip with my best friend. Middle of the night. Middle of nowhere. He was watching a movie on a little shitty DVD player. I was going about 90. As I'm passing a semi his blinkers come on. So I consider falling back to not get merged into, but I'm young and stupid so I keep on the gas to get out of his way. I'm almost past him when I start to fishtail. Black ice. Let off the gas. Hold the wheel straight. And the car's simply no longer in my control. As the car starts to spin, I very calmly turn to my friend. Look him in the eyes. And tell him in a conversational tone. Make sure your seatbelt's fastened. We're about to crash. Double quote. The signal on the semi was probably his hazards. In retrospect, we luckily just spun out and wound up in the ditch on the far side of the road facing the wrong way. Across 4 lanes of traffic in the pitch dark. So lucky. I was 16 years old. I had my lower right wisdom tooth come in and it broke the tooth next to it. That caused an abscess. Which led to an infection in my jawbone. I was taken to the ER by my mother because she thought I had some sort of lockjaw because I couldn't open my mouth. It was so swollen. The doctor told her that I couldn't be treated there and so I was ambulanced to another hospital an hour away. I remember slipping in and out consciousness. Getting prepped for the surgery and having my dad there. The last thing I remember thinking was that I didn't want to go yet. I would make so many people devastated if I died. I remember crying before and my dad just calmed me down and told me he loved me. I recovered in the hospital for a month. Got a visit from my then boyfriend now husband. Missed high school finals of that year. And was discharged on Christmas Eve. What the fuck? OW. Son of a bitch. IFCK. Run me over. Me being run over by a car while on my motorcycle. I had a guy turn in front of me at an unprotected green light. My last thoughts before impact were, FCK. My bike is only 3 weeks old. About 5 minutes later. About 100 feet down the road where I landed. I got into it with the paramedics who wouldn't let me sit up to check on my bike. Eventually sat up far enough to see her ripped in two. Laid back down and shut the FCK up. When I was like 11 years old I was home alone one day during the summer. Just watching TV while eating Skittles. I like to put a bunch in my mouth and make like a Skittle ball that I would chew on. Something on the show I was watching made me laugh and I swallowed the ball. Which got lodged in my throat. I then experienced a few seconds of sheer terror because I realized that there was nobody here to help me at all and I was probably gonna die. Thankfully. I remembered some cartoon or movie where someone jammed their stomach on a chair and got something unstuck from their throat. So, I lunged at the corner of the recliner as hard as I could with my stomach and it actually worked and popped the small ball out. It was super lucky because I really had no idea what I was doing. But one of the worst feelings I have ever experienced. Definitely never ate Skittles that way again after that, and to this day I'm still a bit paranoid about eating certain things when alone. I tried to commit suicide via drowning in a public pool. I was 8 and short for my age, so I purposely went to the deep end. My last thoughts were, at least daddy won't see this and the rest of my family never pays attention to me, so I'm coming to heaven, God. The lifeguard rescued me just before I passed out, and my mother yelled at me for going to the deep end, saying I should have known better and told to sit on the grass for the rest of the day. I was dealing with being sexually abused by her father and I just wanted it to finally end. I thought about how I didn't buy enough pizzas from my favorite pizza place. It's pretty good. But thinking about pizza when you think you're dying is pretty depressing in retrospect. That's it. As I looked at the surface of the water I couldn't reach. Same. Then followed it with the thought that this was something dumb you would see someone do on a show that was popular at that time in the 90s. Rescue 911. And that they would probably do a reenactment of how we all went canoeing even after we were warned the river may continue to rise while on our trip. Was a visual experience. Not a thought. Almost died from COVID. Still can't get the image of my husband grieving after everyone leaves after my funeral and he's alone out of my head. She haunts me. I was in an accident once. They had to shock my heart back as I had flatlined in the ambulance. It all happened so fast and don't really remember anything. There were others in the car, 3 others. We all survived. A friend in the backseat swears I repeatedly yelled "oh shit" after the car had flipped a few times and came to a stop upside down. I have no memory of it at all. Getting over a bad case of bronchitis. I was at my computer when I had a coughing fit so bad my wife tells me I blacked out and stopped breathing. I woke up to her smacking my chest trying to wake me. I remember nothing whatsoever after things went dark. 1 second I was coughing crazily and suddenly lights out. I'm glad your wife was there to save you. The other day I swallowed some food wrong and began coughing involuntarily. I could not stop to take a breath. My body just kept coughing. After about 30 seconds, seemed like forever. The air was completely gone from my lungs and I felt like I was gonna pass out. But somehow I finally managed gasped for air. That sound is something I'll never forget. I thought I would literally die a few years back at Riot Fest when System came on and I got trampled by people. I was trying so hard to get back up but felt my body give out. I thought this is how Jon Snow must have felt in the Battle of the Bastards. Luckily I was pulled out and tossed in front before I passed out. Sorry, had to edit. It was pointed out that Battle of the Bastards actually came out after. That thought was from me watching the episode thinking holy FCK, that's exactly how it felt. I will say that the last plea I was giving was calling out to Sug and hoping he'd see the suffering on my face to stop the show for a bit. I didn't listen to System for a good few years after that. Brought back memories. I can't believe this is how I die. Double quote. Drunk. Falling off a 30-foot cliff into about 2 feet of water at Lake Havasu. AZ on spring break. It just hurt really bad. I almost fell 40 feet. I was tangled in a rope with 2 kayaks and 100 pounds of stuff on the other end raising it up a sinkhole. My buddy gets tired and lets go. It's too much for me to handle alone. I let go but then realize I'm tangled in the rope. The rope was feeding so fast that my gloves were smoking and the leather was wearing away. I couldn't slow it down. I just grabbed on tight to a tree and tried to cut the rope. Scariest moment of my life. I still have a scar on my leg from when a rock stabbed my leg. Long story short. Be careful of cliffs. I remember each handful of pills going down so easily. Like simply swallowing a mouthful of food. It surprised me. As I was one who normally struggled to take more than a single pill at a time. I wasn't struggling this time. Though. I had downed a cocktail consisting of 6 handfuls of a small mix of medications. It took a moment before anything came to mind. Everything was so quiet. The silence was almost deafening. My mind became foggy. My stomach suddenly queasy. My legs and arms felt so tremendously heavy. Shaky. As I tried to get up, I started to feel my heart beating. It had a change in pace from normal and was loud, like thunder pulsating in my ears. The first thing I managed to mumble out after fumbling to call my best friend on the phone was, I f'd up. Double quote. Today marks 4 years since making it out of the psychiatric ward for my attempted overdose. I'm still alive. And it feels good. At 19 years old I got caught on an electrified current and couldn't let go. As I was being shocked I thought I was going to die, and all that went through my mind was extreme sadness because I hadn't had my babies yet. I was rescued, obviously, and I had my babies. They will never find me. Almost drowned in Hawaii in a riptide and no one noticed. I was 10. Thankfully I was a very strong swimmer and managed to swim out of it. But I was quite a ways out. The beach was very narrow, close in with rocks on each side. So I basically had to get pitted by a huge wave at the end to get through the last 20 yards. Crawled up on the beach. Literally exhausted. Got yelled at for staying out too long. Double quote. My dad and I got caught in a current when I was about that age. I could barely swim. Thankfully he kept his head and got us out while I clung onto his back for dear life. It took probably over an hour to get us out and back to shore. I remember we both passed out for hours after we got home. Exhausted from our battle with Mother Nature. I never got to have my own cat. I was 6 years old. In the hospital with mono and strep and being administered antibiotics that I was having a severe and violent allergic reaction to. Everything was slow and fading, and honestly I don't know how I'm still alive. Luck, I guess. I got my cat though. When an older boy tried to murder me by drowning me in a public pool as the lifeguard was 2 feet away not paying attention. I thought, well, 5 is a good age to live too. Double quote. Then my mom luckily, lols, noticed and ripped that little FCK out of the pool so fast and saved me. Lifeguard didn't even notice that commotion. Just one example of my thoughts before one of my many near-death experiences. Postscript. OMG. Whoa. This got many a like. It is a very exciting post, I guess. He had a stroke last year and was taken to the ER by my brother. The last thing I remember was asking him to take a picture of me with his phone as I must look terrible. After I was admitted, I didn't remember anything other than dreams until late October. And days after I was admitted, when everything was a blank, they induced a coma so that my brain swelling would go down. And I was critical. So I presume I was pretty close to dying then. Fuck, am I having a heart attack? There's no way. I'm not thin enough for that. Some my thoughts as my heart went into palpitations due to severe electrolyte imbalance BC of anorexia. Spoiler alert, I was thin enough. The doctor told me I could have dropped dead at any moment. Took me a while for recovery to click and several hospitalizations, but 6 years later I'm doing pretty good for myself. My heart stopped beating for 7 seconds while I was eating dinner in my hospital bed waiting to be discharged. I realized I was going to pass out and put my arm across my plate so I wouldn't fall face first into it. All I could think of was, this is gonna make a mess. Glad they took their time with the paperwork. Ended up walking out of there 7 days later with a pacemaker at the age of 46. Nothing. Blacked out. But my thoughts before that was happening was something like, I shouldn't have gone out today. Body was going into shock and heart was slowing down really fast. I was in the process of being electrocuted. Having been working all day atop a scissors lift. The electricians had left a 277 volt line live, and while I was standing and reaching while running the last low voltage run of the job, I contacted their line. I saw the white light at the end of the tunnel. All I knew was throbbing and 60 cycle noise and the white light. My last thought was, I wonder if I can tell my knees to unlock. Obviously they did. Since I am here typing this. Severe electrical burns. Still here living the life. I was stabbed in the neck by someone robbing my house. I totally thought I was going to die. I hate myself. But I begged the guy who stabbed me to stay because I didn't want to die alone. He said sorry and walked away. That F-king broke my heart. Thankfully he called 911 for me. I almost overdosed from heroin. As I was sitting in my buddy's truck dying. All I could think was, where's the pain? I mean, it wasn't fun. But it was not painful.